I had met all these various roles I did, but I hadn't met myself. So be kind, be compassionate, and you are good enough.
Every time I speak with you, you get me thinking
Thank you.
about these things, and there's so many extra layers to it.
Yeah.
And I don't think I don't think there's this many layers. Welcome to episode 2 of the Mission to Mission podcast. I'm talking to Katie Muldoon today, which I've been really looking forward to. So you've had an amazing career, in my opinion. You left RAF in 2014. I
did, yeah.
Had a break?
I did, yes. Went
that?
travelling around the world.
How was that?
It was awesome. Absolutely incredible. Went all the way around America. Visited Central America, South America, and then randomly went to Borneo
Nice.
and climbed Mount Kinabalu.
Ooh. How long did that break last for?
So that was, I took about a year off. Not all of it was travelling, but I took a year. And it was a really good reflective period. As much as I was seeing the world and doing different things, I took a lot of time to take a break and recognise that I was leaving something and going to start something new.
Super smart, because you jumped straight back in after that.
Yeah, I did. But what I would say though is the only thing I knew for certain when I left the military was that I wanted to leave the military. That was it. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know what I wanted to be. I didn't know anything. I just knew I wanted to leave the military. And I never inquired why.
Really interesting.
Yeah. And this I think this is probably quite a big one actually for people, because it was my decision. But there was something really important that happened to me when I was asked to go and do my 4th tour of Afghanistan. And every other time I'd been asked, I was like, game on, yep, this is what I trained to do. And something somewhere inside me went, no, I'm not going to do it. And I thought, what the, that's not how I think. And I couldn't do it. And I said, I think I need to leave because I couldn't face saying I couldn't do it.
And what on reflection when you went away, did you figure out what that was?
No, I think I know now. But when I was travelling, I was very much battling with listening to the voice that said no. So whilst I was travelling, I wanted to tackle that voice and go, what was going on with me? Why did I say no? That's the whole thing I'm there for. And I didn't listen to the voice. I fought with the voice.
Really? Why now? Why? We've definitely gone off piste already. I love that. Why did you say no? Why, now that you've had this time to think about it?
I'm going to go a little bit into some of my training, if I may, bring in a little bit of theory here. Yeah. Right. So what the military does is it provides a fantastic, what we call a container, a structure for people to develop into their personality, into their character. Okay. But what the military does is the military puts mission first, and your job is to understand your part in the mission. So it strengthens ego and it strengthens courage. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't encourage development of self. Who makes you, your unique character? And if it doesn't fit necessarily with the structure or the container, you may try to suppress it. And I would say that when I got my 4th invitation to go to Afghanistan, my character, myself said no. And I had never met myself. I had met the engineer. I had met the international relations graduate, the engineer graduate. I had met the engineering officer. I had met all these various roles I did, but I hadn't met myself. I hadn't met what makes me, me. And my body, my mind decided that now was the time it wanted to introduce me to me. But you don't have the control over the timing of that. So instead of me going, oh, this is interesting, what's going on here? My ego said, we got a good job, we've got a great career, we're doing good work, we're doing great things. We're not listening to that voice. And that's called ego defense. So that's what your ego does. It does its best to keep you functioning and to keep you alive. But the challenge is that your whole self is not just your ego. Now, there's many different modalities, and they'll explain ego in different ways, and they'll explain concept of self in different ways. So some of your listeners may know a different way of explaining it. But the self is can be broken down into lots of different things, and it's your generational history. It's the sex that you are. It's your personality that you developed from the age of 0 to 2. It's all of these things that come together to give you your personality. That makes you, excuse me, someone who's what you find funny, what you're interested in, who you can relate to. And it's also things like when you listen to a bit of music, why do you cry but I don't? Or a piece of art that you love but I can't stand the sight of. That's unique to you. And in this moment that I said no, that's what was happening. Is myself said, now is my time, and I'm going to come out, and we're going to have a different way of being.
Do you think that, because the whole of the militaries, I understand that they break you down right at the beginning.
Yeah.
That's the whole point, to mould you into the machine. And I was having a conversation yesterday with somebody who just spoke about how amazing the machine is. If you think about it,
yeah.
How amazing this machine is and how it works. Do you think people lose themselves a little bit throughout that journey? Like, I relate to this. I relate to it because at 28, I don't know why I left at that point. I felt like it was that then, or I do 22.
Right.
That was the point, and I felt like I wasn't doing what I wanted to do.
Right.
But I haven't reflected, I don't think, as much as you reflect on these things and with your training. Do you think people, this is why the transition's so difficult, because people don't understand who they are?
Yeah, so this is, to me, this is the crux of transition, right? So when you join the military, you go to a training centre. And the reason it's not in the middle of town or easily accessible for lots of things is so that it's a place where there is just the group that is going to change together. And that group is contained by instructors, by literal structure of the place that you stay. But where you can focus on transformation and growth. So you don't need to worry about your meals. You don't need to worry about a roof over your head kind of thing. You just focus on what is that transformation and growth I'm going to make. Now, our ability to transform and grow is different for all of us. So it all depends on our executive function. It depends on our how we grew up, all sorts of things. So what the military does, it brings us all onto a level pegging. And the reason that the military training is not particularly enjoyable or relaxed or whatever is because together we will get through this. And that is a fundamental, important life lesson, is no matter how tough it is, you can get through this. And when you're in a group that is going through it together, you can reminisce, you can remember. So when you're faced with something similar, that's what your body and your mind does. I've been in these tough positions and I do get through this.
And you've done it as a team,
and you've
so
done
you
it
build
as a
those
team.
bonds.
Absolutely, absolutely right. But when we transition out, that is also exactly the same transformational opportunity. But we don't get to go to a separate place as a group to make meaning of our experiences, to make meaning of why we're leaving, to try and understand what might come next. Who am I? What has these X number of years helped me become? The military doesn't do that. And so what happens is you do get some training courses, but again, we're very much in structure here, skills. We're not in that unstructured or even anti-structure space where come what might, you want to discover, what am I feeling? What am I thinking? What does that mean?
And that's alien to you in the military, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, you don't even have these conversations, right? It's just not a...
Well, this is the kind of I've been out for 10 years, like maybe people are having these conversations, but they weren't having them when I was serving.
Neither.
Certainly.
I mean,
Right.
I've been out for 7 and
Right.
I never had these conversations.
Right. And this is the space where we have it's called negative capability, right? Which is I just don't know. And when you look at the creative space, that's space where imagination can really take place and things can be invented and creativity. So we often hear about like innovation and how important it is. And so many ex-military go into innovation. And for me, I'm like, that's interesting because we may try to overcompensate for what we didn't have in our military career.
You say things and I think about my own situation and I don't like structure.
Right.
I don't like uniformity. I don't like... Is that then overcompensation on my part for doing something for 12 years?
Well, this is hey, I wouldn't be able to diagnose.
Yeah,
this is not what I do. But I certainly have these conversations. That's exactly the type of conversations what we do. And what we do is we swing, we move over it in an aim to integrate all parts. So even in society, even since if you read like Greek myths, right? You read about Apollo, and you read about Dionysus, right? Apollo is structure, is making sure that everything happens, is war. Okay, but Dionysus is wine and freedom and drinking. And if you look at our society, our whole world swings one way than the next. So if you look at some of the arts that we've created, they're often followed by an industrial revolution afterwards because we swing the other way. So not only does our society do it, we do it. But this is our life's challenge, is we will always be trying to find the way to balance and integrate both. But if we've had a dominance of one, naturally we will try and overstretch into the other. But then the challenge is, how do I integrate both of these to get balance? And that's what happens is when you can be satisfied with life. So that doesn't mean you don't have drive, but you aren't fixating your being or your whole value on something external to you.
And why do you think then? I mean, you've just talked about it, with the societal differences.
Yeah.
Why do you think some people lean towards defence when they get out, which is kind of like the not the same, but the same in a sense. And then some people like myself go, nah, I'm running away from this. I want to go and do something completely different away from defence. And I see quite a big split of people who
You do, and it relates a little bit to what we're talking about. And often what it happens is we want to find in life where everybody is about relational experiences. Okay, so we want to be able to relate to the person in front of us. We want to be able to relate to society. We want to be able to relate to a book, right? And naturally, as you said earlier in our conversation, hey, I'm relating this to me. Yeah, absolutely right. But when we transition out, we can say, hey, I'm going to go and do this job, and it's nothing to do with the military. I don't want anything to do with the military or defence. And we're looking for relational. We're looking for, do you get me? Do I understand what's happening? And what happens is some people then migrate back into defence because I get the language. I get the culture. I remember in my first job coming out of the military after my travels, and I was 5 minutes outside the meeting room going, where is everyone? Because it's 5 minutes before the meeting starts. And people arrived 5 minutes after the meeting. Some people didn't show up. And I was absolutely bamboozled. I was like, what is happening?
And then you slowly figure out that nothing is the same as being in the military.
Right. Yeah. And so this is the thing, is some people are like, oh, this is hard. And actually, I just want to be able to provide for my family, and I get the military. I know how it works and whatever. And that's one thing. That's not what everyone's reason is, but that's one reason. And great. If that works for you, and this is the kind of thing I really encourage veterans, is give yourself a soft landing when you leave. And your soft landing might last 2 weeks, might last 20 years. Just be kind to yourself and roll with it. But a soft landing is so important because the outside world, the norms and behaviours of it are so different.
It's so challenging because people put a lot of pressure on themselves, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because it's unstructured.
Yes.
And there are so many variables, whether that's personal, financial, family, what industry to go into, what size of company, what networking, CV, LinkedIn. It's a boiling pot. It's challenging.
Oh, yeah. And also is something as well. So let's not forget that for a lot of the military, they may return home, which they haven't lived. The location might not be where they've lived for 10 years or something like that. So one of these things is stressful. Moving house, new job, new schools for the kids. One of these is stressful. Now put 10 of these things into the mix and you have a very, very stressful situation. So that's the thing in the beginning is, how can I alleviate the stress of that transition? And as I say, it might be for 2 weeks, but it might be for 20 years.
So how do people unpick this? How do people build some level of structure into that transition? You've done all of this research, you've done all of your training, and I'm intrigued every time I speak to you about this topic. But how do they map this?
First and foremost, it's in relation. So if there are groups of people who are transitioning, so like certainly when I left, there was the Career Transition Partnership. If there is a structure that can formulate these talking spaces, I couldn't encourage it enough. And it really is, it's about meaning making. It's stories, it's telling your bits, it's those kind of things that are so important. But something that will be hard for people is, and let me give you an example, actually, to bring this to life a little bit, is during the training, I was always given feedback that I'm too much of a clarifier. I have 100 questions to every order, right? And I had to stop asking questions. Okay, there's a little bit about when you joined the military. Who were you? What was the thing? What was the stories that you were told? You're too much this. You're too not enough that. Okay, have a little inquiry about those. So me being a massive clarifier, I was like, well, what's a massive clarifier about? What's that about? So there's a bit about seeking certainty. There was a bit about I don't want to get it wrong. Is that still true? And after 10 years of service, no, that wasn't true. But I changed the massive clarifier trait to I am massively curious. And so my questions no longer became about satisfying, am I going to get it wrong? Am I going to miss something? But my questions became more about, I'm really interested in what you've got to say. And so here I am, and it's my job now. So the thing that I was told to do less of is now my job.
And that's a good transition to what is your job now?
So what I do is I'm a coach and I'm a trainee psychotherapist as well. So I work in a clinical way as well as part of my training, but I work with people who are in transition phases. So people who are transitioning to senior leadership, people who are transitioning in life, people who are moving places, starting new jobs, doing new things, and they want to have the best start. What do I keep from the way I used to do things? What do I do differently now? And I work across the public sector, tech, wide-ranging people, and talk about these transition spaces and provide that space where I can help people make meaning and make sense of what I was, who I am, and who do I want to become.
So you've formalised this kind of...
Yeah, formalised.
You've formalised, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. You've been through this switch.
Yeah.
You've been through that transition. Do you think a lot of what you've learnt is from that transition, and then you've just kind of built structure with the training that you've done?
So what it is it's the value I saw in it. So the thing that I had never really appreciated the healing part of being heard. So when I was able to make meaning of things, my life transformed. And in that I mean not just the ability to have a good life and make the most of what was happening right in front of me, but where I saw closed doors, I now saw opportunities. And all of that started with the journey of making meaning and being able to put some stuff down and being able to work out who am I right now and what do I want to become. And life changes. Life absolutely changes. And it's not about binary options anymore. It's a completely different experience. And because of the journey I'd been on, I wanted to find out how I could help others have that journey. And so, yes, I've formalised the qualifications that I need to do that. And so in the future, hopefully, all going well, I'll be able to work with people who are finding it particularly hard. So right now, I work with people who are in jobs, who are functioning, who do it. But my training as a psychotherapist is so that I can work with people who are in a much more difficult state of mind.
How did you find that transition from working at PA Consulting to doing your own thing fundamentally?
Yeah, so I loved working there, right? And they're an innovation consultancy as well. So everything was about sort of pushing boundaries, ideation, that kind of thing. But sure, they had its own structure, kind of stuff. But in a very similar way is I wanted more. I wanted to do something different. So I actually joined a startup that was doing dual-use technology. And right in front of me, Royal Marines, who started it, I saw that whole military piece about camaraderie, adventure, courage. I saw all of that. And I also saw, as we were starting to talk to people about it and about the idea that that they had and what they wanted to do, was the ability to listen to the developers, listen to the customers that we would, and I wanted that to be my role. And so that's what I do now. So if I hadn't joined that startup and seen the courage of those people in what they were doing, I wouldn't be able to do what I was doing now. They gave me the courage to do it myself. So
it's so interesting. I wouldn't, 7 years ago, I'd have laughed at you if you would have said I was running my own business.
Right.
Laughed. But I had the experiences along the way and met the people along the way who were great, but like human beings, just normal people. That made you think, well, why can I not go and do that?
Exactly.
If I wouldn't have gone through that journey and actually met them and experienced that, I would have never started my own business.
And there we go again, relational.
100%.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is you can read in a book and you go, oh, you could read on like X or you could look at Instagram, you go, oh, maybe I could do that. But right in front of me, we've had similar experiences. We've had this, maybe I could do this. And that's the thing, it's relational. And that's why the military network is absolutely phenomenal when you leave, because you have this wide range of people who have gone on to discover new ways of being. And
role models.
Role models, yeah, absolutely. And visibility is really important. But also is there's the really sort of strong part of the military that encourages the relational aspect around risk as well, right? And there's a really important thing which our society, I think, is struggling a little bit with at the moment, which is around risk and fear of getting it wrong, and that can be fear of your product going wrong. That can be fear of saying the wrong thing. But when you take risk, you take a risk that the joke might not land. You take a risk that they might not reply. What happens when they do laugh? What happens when they do reply? Is that you create a relationship which has intimacy. You had the courage to tell the joke that everybody found funny, and that moves you forward. And when people are no longer willing to take risk for fear of, we all remain static and stuck. And that's not what we are. We're relational human beings. And to transform and grow, we need to take risk.
Why do we have that failure mentality in the UK? I don't think it's everywhere. I speak. I was in an event 4 weeks ago, talking about the difference between venture capitalists in the US and venture capitalists in the UK, and actually the fear of failure in the US from a startup perspective is completely different in the UK.
I'd give two aspects to this. One is I go back to my structure and my anti-structure. Structurally, the UK punishes people for failure. If your business doesn't succeed, It's safer to stay in employment. You try getting a mortgage, you try doing all this sorts of stuff when you don't have a track record of monthly recurring revenue.
2 years of business books to even.
Right. So structurally, we don't encourage it. Yeah. And I don't know much more than that to be able to go into any of this sort of reasons behind that or whatever. That I'd leave that to more informed people than me on that side. But also is in the anti-structural space. Look at how we educate people, right? There's a great little clip on YouTube. I hope it's still on YouTube because it's great. Okay, and a little child is like 4 years old, probably actually even younger, right? Is given a paperclip, and the person says, "There you go, do what you want with that." And the kid is like, "Can I bend it? Can I stretch it? Can I do whatever you want?" Right? And the kid just plays around with it. Give it to a 9-year-old, and the kid goes, "It's just for putting paper together." Gone.
Yeah.
At 9.
Yeah.
What? You're like, hang on, the kids lost the imagination and the creativity at 9. So, again, I can't do anything about our education system. But what I would really sort of encourage people to do is and again, take your military experience in this, is get the iPad down, get everybody away from iPads, get back to storytelling. Get back to dinners around tables and get that relational exchange going, which then creates ideas, it then creates confidence, it then creates the moments of, this wouldn't have happened if I hadn't spoken to you. Because if you are looking at Twitter or X, or if you're looking at Instagram, this does not happen. Right. And what we need to be able to do is children need to be able to have what they call create symbolic capacity. They need to be able to imagine. They need to be able to create an idea of something other than themselves. And children do this through relations with their toys. Right. So they'll talk to their toys. They will put their teddies to bed. They will talk to them. That's their inner voice developing. That's how they talk to themselves. And as they get older, they no longer verbalize it outside, but it's inside, okay? When they're talking to their iPad, they don't. They just go on receive with the iPad, right? And so when we then look at why people are not willing to take risk, because they haven't had those relational conversations. They haven't had those exchanges. They also need to experience boredom. You need to sit around the dinner table and listen to the adults talking and then go, I've got to get through this. Now, one of the tests that I used to have when describing somebody was, I used to call it the Bastion test. In Camp Bastion, you'd wait for how many hours before leaving? And you'd randomly sit next to somebody. Could you strike up a conversation with the person next to you and contain a good conversation for 3 hours? Now, if I hadn't been bored as a kid, I suspect I wouldn't have been able to do that. But there we are. I met loads of people because I randomly sat next to them at Bryce, or I randomly sat next to them at Bastion, or in a Chinook, or wherever. But if all we do is look at our phones and look at our iPads, you won't know who's left or right of you. And for your mental health, it's really, really dangerous to just have an internal voice that just goes on inside your head, because we are relational and we make meaning through conversation.
So how do you give then advice on risk? I mean, and I ask this, it's probably a selfish question to be honest, because I'm asked, do you think I should take this job? I try to speak to a lot of people. I enjoy.
Yeah.
And I think it's back to that point.
Right.
I enjoy conversations.
Yeah.
I enjoy learning from people. I have a ton of mentors who I meet regularly. My appetite for risk is quite high, I would say.
Sure.
From even before the business, I would say moving from a senior AE role to a sales role at a startup, I'm open to risk. So then when people ask you your opinion on things, it's your opinion and it's based on me as an individual. So right. I'm always very careful to give my opinion on the level of risk in which someone should take. So how do you advise people in general to consider risk? So
it is exactly as you were saying, it is subjective, right? And our appetite for risk, again, comes from our history. And sometimes it comes from privilege, right? And it comes from what we've witnessed, right? So I would never give advice on risk, but what I listen to is I listen to not what people are saying, but I listen to how they are saying it to me. So if they're asking me, do you think I should do this or do you think I should do that? That is how they're telling me something else. And they're telling me a feeling. I am feeling worried about this.
I'm apprehensive that I'm not got the tools.
Right. And part of our desire as military people, and I think this is quite sort of across military people, is to help, right? And so you want to jump in and you want to say, well, hey, if you don't like it, you can just move on. And solution,
yeah.
Okay. But what we have as veterans is we fix stuff, we get stuff done. And in these moments when people say, well, what should I do? Right? They're not asking you what should they do. They're trying to tell you how they're feeling. And that's the key. Pause. What are they actually trying to tell you? When you surface how you're feeling, it halves it. And then we start to understand that that's natural. Nerves, if it's nervous, if it's scared, we have a totally different conversation. And then the risk doesn't become about data and doesn't come about hedging or anything like that. It becomes about the emotion behind it. And everybody acts on emotion. We like to think we're rational, but we're not. We act on emotion. And so, yes, you do need the data, et cetera, but you act on how you're feeling.
Amazing. Well, we've completely gone off piste. I love it. I knew we would. So we're actually running out of time, and I could carry on chatting. I'm super, super interested in this subject. 3 actionable takeaways.
Right. I think challenge. Okay. So I think what we need to be able to do here is don't just focus on the doing. So when you're leaving the military as a veteran, you've got tasks to do. You absolutely do. But take time to reflect. Take time to make meaning of that, of your story, and not just what you were told the story was, what it meant to you. Why did you join the military? Why are you leaving? Are they the same thing? What needs to stay? What needs to go? So I would be in the challenge piece. In the purpose piece, I would say that this is about meaning making, and bringing yourself into the world. So all of the characters, traits that you have, get to know them, get to learn about them, bring them out, invite them in, and work out who you are and that what makes you good enough, and see what happens. And I'd probably say a practical one about the soft landing. So make sure you land somewhere where either you know people or you know the industry so that you can do this work. This work is not something you do over a weekend. It is ongoing. And I reflect every single night. I have prompt questions in my journal. I reflect every single night. And some of this stuff comes up from 20 years ago. That this I still haven't, that's interesting. It isn't what I thought it was this. So be kind, be compassionate, and you are good enough.
Wow. I've nearly lost my voice. But wow, honestly, Kay, you just get me thinking. Every time I speak with you, you get me thinking.
Thank you.
About these things, and there's so many extra layers to it.
Yeah.
And I don't think is in this many layers. So you really kind of start to stimulate the way I think about, the advice you try and give and where you probably shouldn't give certain bits of advice. And I think it's kind of this kind of subject and this topic is alien to people getting out.
Yeah.
You don't speak about these things when you're in the military.
Yeah, it is, and it's I get it, and fine, but I think the military, in terms of like mental health, in terms of this, don't be afraid of it, right? Because when you treat people like adults, they behave like adults. And so when you have the opportunity to discuss things like this, you can contain these conversations, you can have good conversations. And for me, when people leave, the people who suffer when they leave, for me it's this, they need to talk. And it's not that mental health is good to talk thing, that's important. But you can do so much to prepare yourself for a different type of resilience once you leave.
Yeah, and you don't, without listening to these types of things, you discover that you should talk to people through the journey, through meeting certain people. Yeah. So it's like just getting the message out, because to me it's all about performance, and performance can be earning £400,000, or it could be having a super fulfilling career where your family's happy. Whatever that is to you as an individual, for me personally, actually speaking to people regularly has helped unlock it.
Absolutely, and I think that's really important. You know, if you have a hierarchy and you go, oh, that's success. If I go up the hierarchy, that kind of, that's what I thought it was. That's what I thought. I thought it was extrinsic. I thought it was status. I thought it was money. I thought that was how I would present to my family that I was doing well. And it wasn't until I let that go that I returned to my family, that they got me back, and I started to relax into myself and be who I am. But I had to let that go. For others, they don't need to let that go. And this is so important. It's unique to you. And that's why when we hear such diversity of people on things like this, that's why it's so important. Not everybody will relate to this, but somebody might go, that means something to me.
It's good enough.
It's good enough. And that's the key word here. You are good enough. And that is really, really important in life, is you are good enough.
Katie, amazing. You've come from Gloucester to be here.
Oh, Gloucestershire.
Sorry, Gloucestershire. To be here, I thank you very much. I'm sure people will listen to this and find it useful.
Thank you, Ben. I appreciate the invitation.
If you enjoyed the episode, please leave us a 5-star review and share the episode with your friends. If you want to meet more people like Katie, then join our community, and I'll see you next time.